It's the Karen Reed retrial. 4 corrupt cops in Canton that America loves to hate. But who were they before the Karen Reed case? We'll do a deep dive on Guarino, Higgins, Bukhenik, and Proctor to show you who they were before they got their hands on Karen Reed's case. Were they heroes who lived long enough to become the villain? All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center. Wake up, America. It's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. It's a TV show on the internet about 2 best friends who are called by a small-town sheriff to investigate when the Mothman turns his Etsy into a brick-and-mortar store on 2nd Street. I'm John. I'm an actual 911 dispatcher. I've been doing that job in my community for 10 years. I'm joined, as always, by Lieutenant Andrew Baxter. He goes by the fake name Drew Breezy on the internet, but that doesn't stop him from being an authentic cop. 29 years of service. Drew, it's been a heck of a week. How you doing?
I just wanted to find the difference between ex-cop and retired cop. It's not even like a matter of semantics, in my opinion. They don't compare. An ex-cop did maybe 6 years and got in trouble for running a business he shouldn't have run. A retired cop is somebody who did close to 3 decades and has a full pension and a full retirement.
Yes, you're not half the cop that half the people think that you are. I don't know. Anyway, we do want to talk about the police officers in the Karen Reed case. We talked last week, and we basically kicked a hornet's nest, making people mad as possible about who people are in that case and what they're doing to Karen Reed. Just so that we're clear, and for the timestamp, we think Karen Reed is innocent, but we also think that the cops did a job making it look like a conspiracy, and also that more than one thing could be true. Like the view that I currently hold is that Karen Reed killed him, and the cops didn't think they could prove it, so they also framed her. Like, I think that it's multiple things going on. So just calm down. Don't get so mad. Do leave a comment. We appreciate it. We respond to 99.9% of comments. But let's talk about some of the police officers in this case. Not all bad guys as they're painted out to be. Maybe they are doing something wrong in this case, but they do have a history.
Nobody believes us anyway, but it's fine. It's kind of in black and white. But here's what I did. I for you, the viewer, because I want you to participate in our show. This should not just be us talking at you. It should be us talking with you. And I love talking with you, some more than others. But I put a poll up on the Comm Center on YouTube, which said, which law enforcement witness lost your trust the fastest? I asked for a reason and whether it was in trial 1 or trial 2, if you voted. And so then we came up with these poll results as of now, which is like as of we're recording this. So it looks like Detective Michael Proctor, former Massachusetts State Police officer, or Trooper Michael Proctor's well in the lead. 67% people say
they actually hate him more than they hate you. It's amazing.
Yes, I know. I think I might be in the 50s, but so there's that. And then Yuriy Bukhenik, who is now in Michael Proctor's stead, basically testifying, to things that Michael Proctor did. He came in second at 19%. And then Brian Higgins was, at a paltry 12%, not much, according to the polls. When you got to go A, B, C, or D, they didn't think that maybe they think he's lying, but they think that they lost trust in somebody else a lot quicker. And then Nicholas Guarino was at the bottom of this whole thing. And by the way, I want to just address something real quick. We talked last week about the texts being read by Yuriy Bukhenik. And I said that it was the prosecution, blah, blah, blah. And
How dare you?
I know, I kind of misspoke in that sense because it was actually the defense that made him read the text. It was during the prosecution's case is what I was trying to
Right.
get across, but it's all right. It's neither here nor there.
I loved it because it just goes to show you this is something I experience all the time as a dispatcher and you did as a cop. Anything short of inhuman perfection is not okay. We have to be perfect at our jobs, whether we're cops, dispatchers, or podcasters. And if we get anything wrong, then we go to the cross and get crucified. So I thought that was perfect.
This is Nicholas Guarino. This is the easy one. Let's get him knocked out of the way. He's the one that lost credibility, but not as quickly as everyone else. Life-saving moments and obviously controversies. He trained in digital forensics once he became a police officer, and he's certified in electronic evidence extraction. He's and that forms the basis of his investigative specialty. But he started with the Norwood Police Department, and he served roughly a decade as a patrol officer there. Notably, in 2013, he was publicly praised for saving a 69-year-old man during a snowstorm.
Nice.
Thank you. He earned a commendation from the fire chief for that case. Essentially what happened is, it's ironic because he saved a man from a snowbank, but there was a snowstorm coming in. This guy broke his leg. This older gentleman broke his leg, and a city worker was driving by and happened to see him. So he flagged Guarino down, or notified Guarino somehow, who showed up and helped the guy, and then got him, summons to fire rescue to come help. And they got the guy to the hospital, saved his life essentially, because he was immobilized because of the broken leg. He probably would have, succumbed to the hypothermia or frostbite or whatever. So,
but this son of a bitch who saved an old man from dying, he wants to cover up crimes, though.
Yes, he does. But at the Massachusetts State Police, he joined the academy around 2015. He became a trooper in 2016. By 2021, he was a trooper first class. So that's commendable performance. He's proficient in Cellbrite. He's proficient in data recovery. And I know that there are sounds of screaming right now. Go back to our other episode.
Watch the previous episode. People always get mad, but it's like we already talked about that.
We already talked about that. So it's fine if you disbelieve. It's fine that you think that he saw 32,000 messages, combed through them, and said, "Oh my God, these are really bad. These are gonna make this groomer / murdering cop look
who I
good.
Don't know,
I better hide
don't
them."
work directly with Matthew Farwell.
That he doesn't know, or right, that he's going to put his own reputation, career, and possible prison on the line to cover for a guy who banged a 15-year-old. And that's the connection your brain makes. That's fine. That's all on you.
Fun facts: Guarino has kids. I've seen pictures of him posted online in his uniform with a little girl and a wife. But he's definitely going to cover up that kind of abuse against him.
Right. And also, which we can talk about probably next episode, even if you want. But he's involved in the Brian Walsh case. It's an up and coming case. I don't know if you guys know it, but he conducted clean, effective digital forensics, including the retrieval of health and location data, which just completely contradicted the Brian Walsh's alibi. But he was criticized for the Birchmore investigation, apparently missing over 32,000 texts. They were later used to charge Matthew Farwell with murder.
If he was part of the evidence collection, when the federal guys make their case, he'll more than likely be cooperating with that prosecution. And if Matthew Farwell faces some sort of accountability for involvement in Senator Birchmore's death, Trooper Guarino is going to be part of the team that helps put Farwell away.
But he is probably one of my favorite witnesses because of his hot mic moment.
Yes, I did.
Material that you reviewed from the defendant's phone, is that consistent with what you observed in Mr. O'Keefe's?
Yes, it is.
Not going anywhere for a while? Grab a Snickers.
It just completely humanized him. But he remains a trooper first class with the Massachusetts State Police. He's actively testifying in the retrial.
Hey, before you do anything else, make sure you're doing all those YouTube things. Hit like, hit subscribe, and there's a good chance that we said something by now that was inaccurate or pissed you off. So go ahead and leave a comment below, and we'll get back to you. Drew?
In summary, Guarino is a good dude. I know people will hate to hear that. I don't know the guy. I know that If I had a family member that, God forbid, was taken from us way too early, I'd have no problem with that guy investigating. This guy, Brian Higgins, everybody loves to hate Brian Higgins for some reason. He thinks, I don't know if they think that he's kind of the homewrecker. He did some very odd stuff. He destroyed his cell phone and the SIM card within the day before there was a preservation letter that was delivered to him. That looks shady. I mean, there are a lot of things that look very, very bad.
The phone stuff's bad.
And then phone stuff's very bad. And then when you see him on the stand and he's having this back and forth with Alan Jackson about whether he was being ignored and all this other stuff, coupled with the fact that everybody and their brother, plus there's the video of him showing up at the at Canton PD at 1:30 in the morning after having a lot of stuff to drink, and he's looking at his phone, but he said he was never on his phone, although I think he meant he never made a phone call, but he was on his phone. You could see the glow on his face and all that. It appears that he's
all
dishonest.
Those ass dials to Brian Albert Sr., right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There is definitely a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of cause for people to go, here's what we got on Brian Higgins. His career spans military service, firefighting, and federal law enforcement. He grew up in Cambridge from a family of firefighters. He was a combat medic during the Iraq War. He became an EMT. It was obviously fostering his commitment to public safety. And he started a career with the Cambridge Fire Department. He joined the fire department in the 90s, and he rose to the rank of fire lieutenant. He was specialized in like fire and arson investigations, and he ultimately became the face for like fire inquiries, like to the media, from the media and stuff. And he led several investigations of notable fires, including this 2005 fatal house fire. There was a 2003 residential blaze at some place called the Hong Kong Restaurant. And he earned respect for his professionalism, his heroism, and his reports cited in legal proceedings. So he transitioned to federal law enforcement, and he became a special agent with the ATF around 2010. And he focused on arson and explosives. And he was, and believe me, we're going to talk about that in a second. He was involved in joint task forces that targeted violent criminals, illegal firearms, and he was notable for his actions during a 2010 shootout in Somerville, where he actually saved a wounded officer.
My name is Mario Oliveira. I'm retired from the Somerville Police Department.
Why did you retire?
I retired because I sustained serious injuries in the line of duty. I was shot 6 times.
Can you take me back to that night that changed your life forever?
Yeah, so I had been investigating a 21-year-old man from Somerville who found a loophole in the gun laws up in New Hampshire. I wanted to kind of get him back on the right track. So I gave him an opportunity of a lifetime. How about you work for the police? Be a cooperating source. My goal was to get the bigger fish, to get the more dangerous people off the streets. He initially agreed, and then for whatever reason, he had a change of heart. That forced me to get federal warrants for his arrest. And we drove up to his house. As luck would have it, he was home that night. His car was up front. When I opened the car door, I grabbed him by his shirt collar. My badge was clearly displayed. He knows who I am. I have my gun pointed towards him. I'm giving him commands to get out of the car. He was under arrest, get out of the car. And instead, he grabbed me by my wrist. He was yelling at the top of his lungs, "Fucking shoot me, fucking shoot me." And right at that moment, my sergeant was running up the sidewalk with his gun in the air, screaming my name. "Mario, Mario, Mario." And I looked over the roof of the car to see what he wanted. And when I looked back down, all I saw was flashes. The kid shot me at point blank range 6 times. I made it to the hospital by the skin of my teeth. And I remember when the ambulance backed up, I remember hearing the beeping of the ambulance, and then when the doors opened up, I remember seeing a sea of blue, like a corridor of police officers on both sides. They were all tapping me in my leg, telling me they love me. Hang in there, brother, we love you. And I remember lifting my good arm up, and I gave them the thumbs up, letting them know that I'm still alive. I hear you. I hear you.
So, John, this is a photo of the award ceremony. If you'll notice, Mario Oliveira is on the far left, and then who I believe is Brian Higgins is on the far right. I have nothing but respect for Mario Oliveira. He was forced to retire. What happened once he was forced to retire was that the department essentially this is very common in law enforcement, by the way. But the department says, hey, you're not able to work and you haven't accrued enough time to retire. So thanks for your service. And that's about it. You might get some kind of workers' comp payout, but that's about it. So when people talk about medical retirement from the military, that's a thing. When it's a medical retirement from law enforcement, it's rare. It doesn't exist. The reason I'm telling you all that is because Mario went on to become the advocate for people who are just like that, like almost castigated from their departments after suffering like a near death, line of duty injury. There's plenty of articles about what the work he has done. He's done amazing stuff. And it's an amazing feat to be to survive a point blank shooting. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for this guy. He doesn't really talk about Brian Higgins much that I've seen. I don't know the reason. I'm not speculating that there is a reason. Brian Higgins doesn't seem to talk much about the incident either. But I did happen to find the commendation that that Brian Higgins received from that incident.
Hi, this is Milton Valencia, and I'm a Metro reporter with the Boston Globe. We're covering the homecoming of sorts for Somerville police officer Mario Oliveira, who was shot a week ago on election night at about 6 p.m. as he and other police officers were serving a search warrant. We're told that Officer Oliveira was close to dying on the way to the hospital. He suffered about 3 shots to his chest and abdomen and was rushed to Massachusetts General Hospital, where he immediately went into surgery.
So this is the commendation as it's written. On November 2nd, in connection with an ongoing Bureau of ATF investigation and arrest warrant, it was an arrest warrant, not a search warrant, it was obtained on a suspect for firearms violation. And while on surveillance, a vehicle known to be driven by the suspect was observed to be parked on the street in front of his mother's residence. As the suspect departed the residence, Special Agent Brian Higgins and Task Force Officer Oliveira began their approach while Somerville Sergeant Detective McCain and Patrol Sergeant Reardon maintained cover. Task Force Officer Oliveira approached the suspect while he was seated in his car and informed him of the arrest warrant, at which point the suspect opened fire, striking the officer 5 times, disabling him. Agent Higgins, Sergeant Detective McCain, and Sergeant Reardon left their positions of cover and, without regard for their respective safety, and immediately returned fire, eventually fatally wounding the suspect. Agent Higgins left his position of cover to pull Officer Oliveira to the rear of the target's vehicle. Once removed from the threat of crossfire, Agent Higgins retrieved a field medical kit and began applying pressure to Officer Oliveira's wounds. Eventually, Officer Oliveira was rushed to the hospital where he received life-saving trauma care. The ER surgeon credited Agent Higgins' actions with keeping Officer Oliveira alive long enough to be to get to the life-saving care. And let's look at the timing of this also. 2010 is when Higgins became an ATF agent. April of 2013 was when he received that commendation. And then the Boston Marathon bombing happened. And if you don't think that ATF was involved in that, it would be very hard for me to believe that Brian Higgins was not an integral part of that investigation. It's probably not discussed in places, but I'm just doing some ATF math and some Boston math. And he worked there. He worked in Boston, and he was in ATF, and his specialty was, as I said, arson investigations and explosives. So,
well, that was the situation where everyone was working on that in Boston. And since a bomb exploded, you could bet every single person who worked at the ATF in Boston was working on it. So Higgins had a part in it.
Brian Higgins was a hero at one point. Is kind of my point in this. Like, he was a hero at one point, but all of a sudden, because he's part of this trial and everybody's frenzied with Karen Reed, somehow he's a villain. Make your own judgment. Don't let anybody else make that judgment, including me. If you still think he's a villain, he's a villain. I really don't care. I mean, if that's how your brain works, that's how your brain works. Sergeant Yuriy Bukhenik. There are some interesting things that came from my research of Yuriy Bukhenik. Now, he emigrated from the Ukraine at age 9. English is indeed his third language. He said that on the stand the other day when there was a back and forth about, bring me a dictionary and I'll tell you if I'm using the word right or whatever. When 9/11 happened, Yuriy Bukhenik joined the United States Marine Corps. He is a USMC veteran. So eventually what happened in 2019, there was a very cold case in Massachusetts. It's a fellow Marine by the name of David Cox. I'll do a little story on that in a second. But he was the lead homicide detective with the Massachusetts State Police.
The Hollywood film A Few Good Men was a box office hit, but it was also based on a true story involving a Massachusetts Marine.
Years later, that Marine, David Cox, was found murdered in the woods of Medfield. In tonight's New England's Unsolved, Boston 25 News reporter Bob Ward takes us inside this investigation where disturbing questions are still unanswered.
This unspoiled piece of preservation land in Medfield on the banks of the Charles River holds a deadly secret. It was here in April 1994, 27-year-old David Cox was found shot to death beneath a pile of pine branches.
I don't think justice has time limits on it.
The murder of David Cox has haunted his sister Christine, as well as investigators.
David's life mattered, and he was erased.
But now there is a new push to find answers, and it's being led by 2 Mass Day troopers who, like David Cox, are retired U.S. Marines.
Never leave a brother behind, and I feel like David has been left behind for 25 years.
For years, this case focused on David's time in the Marines, specifically his involvement in a hazing incident at Guantanamo Bay that inspired the hit Hollywood film A Few Good Men.
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
We sat down for the first time with David's older brother, Stephen Cox.
Outside of losing a brother, I lost one of my best friends.
Stephen Cox was one of the last people to see David alive in Natick the night before he disappeared.
He was typically very vibrant and confident, and he just seemed a bit reserved that night.
Did he say why?
No, he didn't.
Stephen Cox believes David's time in the Marines is key.
It had military written all over it. It was too highly planned. My feeling is it's a retribution. The only thing I can really bring
retribution
any
for
sense
what?
to. What happened in the Corps? What happened down in Gitmo?
But the rest of the Cox family sees it another way. Christine Cox, David's sister, believes this murder was meticulously planned, even staged.
To suggest this was military, I think, again, was just trying to throw us off track.
So you'll see in these photos.
Case investigators tell me there is simply no evidence pointing back to the military.
The Hollywood aspect of it was investigated. The military connection was investigated and vetted out.
Recently, the state police took me to the spot, nearly a mile into the woods where David Cox was found. The site is between 2 gun ranges. The sound of gunfire here is not uncommon. David himself likely walked this way with his killer.
He's face down in snow with branches lined over him.
And there is another detail here that bothers these 2 retired Marines. David Cox was wearing his U.S. Marine field jacket and hooded sniper jacket. They tell me Marines do not like wearing these clothes in public, and David rarely did.
David wore that field jacket and his Marine Corps sniper jacket for a reason that day, because David knew who he was going with. He trusted that person.
I want the killer identified, not to us, to the world. I want everybody to know who did it. And I want him to pay for it.
25 years later, a stubborn mystery in these pristine woods, but the truth could be close.
I feel that we're going to have an answer one way or the other for this family.
If you have any information about the murder of David Cox, contact the state police assigned to the Norfolk County DA at 617-593-8840. For New England's Unsolved, I'm Bob Ward, Boston 25 News.
Well, for someone who doesn't care about justice, Yuriy Bukhenik sure is going out of his way, not just to open a cold case, but to appear on the news about it.
Right. I found so many things ironic with that. Like, you can't handle the truth is that iconic court moment, but that was the story that this young Marine that was killed, or I don't know if he was young at the time, but he actually testified in that case. The case that they say was not based on a true story, but it was based on a true story, apparently. And the fact that he was killed with his Marine garb on means a lot. And I don't mean to call it garb, but his Marine jacket. These are separated Marines. They're not retired Marines, as the report kept saying. But the fact that he was wearing something that said U.S. Marine Corps and somebody had the balls to eliminate this guy off the face of the planet, because from what I understand, it was a very, it was pretty evident that it was an execution. There's talk that he had that the victim had gambling debts, but he also had, they weren't significant gambling debts, and he had the amount of money in his account to cover any, to well handle any of his gambling debts. So who knows? But this is, it kind of goes to the honor of this whole thing. Like, what do you think this guy's fighting for? What do you think he's lying and trying to cover up for if he's resurfacing a 25-year-old case to get families some closure? What about John O'Keefe's family? Like, trying to get them closure, trying to get them, and you'll see, like, the investigation just led down these roads that led him to Karen Reed, and the trial is for that purpose. The trial is to vet out what is real and what is not, and what the jury believes, the jury of her peers believes, whether she's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt or not.
Their identities as police officers matters a lot, because the fact that you have police officers who are being accused of colluding or being inept or covering up or intentionally missing evidence or not doing a good job to investigate the culprit of the murder of John O'Keefe. This is Yuriy Bukhenik, former Marine, investigating the murder of a separated Marine. Okay? So you have that identity is in play for both cases. You have Bukhenik as the Marine investigating the murdered Marine, and Bukhenik, the cop, investigating the murdered cop. And he seems to be trying hard to get justice for this fallen Marine. Why would he do any less for John O'Keefe?
He revived that cold case out of respect and honor for his fellow Marine. And, it's not to say that he didn't revive other cold cases, but he did that as an honor to his fellow Marine. He obviously was a supervising investigator, very famously now in the John O'Keefe investigation. He is now speaking on behalf of the fired Trooper Michael Proctor. So he has this, I try to put myself in his shoes in the sense that when you have detectives that work for you, they're out autonomously conducting investigations and gathering information and writing their supplemental reports, which you're reading and approving, and you're doing a lot of administrative stuff. That's how you're keeping up with the case. That's how you're asking questions of why haven't you interviewed, or when you interviewed so-and-so, did you ask this question? But it doesn't mean that you're an expert on the case. So you can speak intelligently enough about it. If a prosecutor called off the record on the phone asking questions about the case, hey, why didn't you guys do this? Oh, okay, yeah, here's the you just obviously you're being honest. But if the chain of command wants to know something, normally it's not necessarily the detective that's going to do that communicating. It's going to be the sergeant, somebody in between. So when it seems like he appears absent-minded on the stand, he's trying to recall stuff that somebody else did, and he can only testify to what he did or what he read or what he knows. It's otherwise it becomes hearsay.
It's funny how speaking slowly could sometimes be interpreted as being very thoughtful and intelligent, and then sometimes it can be interpreted as forgetful and trying to confabulate a lie. It's all really, it just, when you see someone answering a question thoughtfully and slowly and with great purpose, the way that you characterize it just shows your cards of what you already think of that guy.
You're absolutely right. This is where I'm saying the level of gamesmanship in this trial is off the chart. As a sports fan, you can criticize the quarterback all day long. That's why it's called Monday morning quarterbacking. But until you've stepped foot on a National Football League field and are willing to endure the bangs and the bruises and the pain on Monday morning and all this other stuff, and know what hot routes are and learn a playbook and do this your whole life, you're just a fan. Like you can sit there on your couch. I've kind of come across the term Sherlock stay-at-homes for a lot of these true crime people that just are dying to put their 2 cents into this criminal trial, but they wrap their entire lives around it. But they simply just don't know what goes into an investigation like that. And it's not their fault, and it's not to talk down to anybody, but there are people that are out here trying to tell you this is how it really is. And if you refuse to believe them, that's on you. If that's how your brain works, that's on you.
Yeah.
Our final candidate is Michael Proctor. He was the one that lost credibility the fastest in trial 1, and it was because of his very
his
nasty,
terrible text messages, his awful behavior. There's not a whole lot we can do to redeem Michael Proctor in your eyes.
The only thing I can tell you is that he was not reprimanded. He was looked at for his investigation, and his reprimand had nothing to do with the investigation. It had to do with his conduct during the investigation. He fell apart. The way I'm going to humanize Michael Proctor is by letting his wife and his sister speak about his life and what he is and who he is. And everything they say about him, you're likely to say, oh, those are just excuses. Let's hear what his wife and sister have to say about it.
More than 3 years after Trooper Michael Proctor got a call to investigate a body in the snow, his wife Elizabeth and his sister Courtney say they had no idea how much their lives and their families' lives would change, including for their young children.
But that's sort of what breaks me, is when I see them playing and so happy, and I'm like, God, they have no idea that their parents' world is crumbling.
Karen Reed's defense has accused Proctor of trying to frame her for the death of John O'Keefe, including by planting pieces of her SUV taillight at the scene.
Is there any doubt in your mind that Michael Proctor might have framed Karen Reed?
No doubt whatsoever in our mind. No doubt whatsoever, and the evidence shows that. The investigations show that.
I don't know if that was intentionally left in by, this came from ABC in Boston, a Boston affiliate, but he asked, is there any doubt in your mind that he intentionally threw this investigation? And they're like, there's no doubt. There's no doubt in our mind. What she's saying is there's no doubt that he didn't, but they didn't clear that up. She said it like there's no doubt. The investigation pointed elsewhere. The investigation pointed towards the evidence that he testified to, is basically what she's saying. But they left that in there, that it just sounded like he said, you don't have any doubt that he fixed this whole thing?
It's subtle manipulation, yeah.
During Reed's first trial, Proctor did admit to writing insulting text messages about her, including that he hoped she would kill herself.
Because the evidence pointed to this woman killing a fellow Boston police officer. So he was angry, he was upset by that. So I understand the need that he had to vent to friends, whether it was appropriate or not.
Elizabeth and Courtney Proctor say those messages do not justify the harassment they say they've received from Reed's supporters, including rocks thrown in their yards and anonymous voicemails like this.
I'm going to be your kid's new mommy, and I'm taking your kids and I'm taking your dogs.
A blogger named Aiden Carney, who goes by the name Turtle Boy, has been charged with witness intimidation in this case, but the Proctors say he's not the only one responsible.
It seems like Karen Reed and Aiden have been conspiring and colluding.
Now, prosecutors have said that Carney and Reed have been communicating, but at this point she is not charged with witness intimidation. Recently, the prosecutors confirmed that a federal investigation into potential misconduct connected to the Reed case concluded without charging Proctor or anyone else. His family say that the feds checked 5 years worth of personal emails and text messages and found no other problems. Live in Canton, David Bukhenik, WCVB News.
Kind of important, don't you think? The feds checked 5 years of emails and text messages and found nothing. They found nothing. Like, yeah, he definitely had a lapse in judgment on this one. Yes, it definitely looks like he's trying to frame somebody. But I don't believe it. I don't believe that's what it is. Like, I believe that this is a lot of understandable pounding from the defense table, making a lot of noise from the defense table, because this woman's facing, how many years in prison, and they're going to use any tactic they can. But the thing is, like, here's how I feel about it. Leave the wife and kids out of this. Like, you're upset about something I did that you quite frankly don't understand. And yeah, I've owned my piece in this, and I've lost my job and my family is crumbling, and you're threatening, my children on the playground, and the children are being looked at differently on the playground, and we're getting threatening phone calls and all this other stuff. Leave them out of it. Like, if they were real badasses, they wouldn't be anonymously threatening anything, and they would strictly, and I'm not condoning this, I'm not suggesting you do this, but they deal with Michael Proctor. Like, I've witnessed a level of childishness, of immaturity in the comments. Like,
and doing the research on Michael Proctor, and again, I'm not here to redeem Michael Proctor in your eyes. I think if his family can't do that for you in saying that he was upset that he believed that Karen Reed killed a fellow cop and that he needed to vent about it, if that doesn't resolve for you what is going on in the mind of Michael Proctor, I'll read you a quick story that I found about him. And it's nothing so grandiose as opening a cold case into a murdered Marine, or under fire saving the life of a fellow ATF agent, or anything so extreme. But I think it says something about common everyday police work, that when people get into our comments and start trashing police and calling police officers lying pigs, as a 911 dispatcher, I always just remember that when these people are trashing the cops, as soon as something bad happens to them, they still pick up the phone and dial 911. And I'm not trying to categorize anyone in this story that I'm about to read as someone who trashes the cops, because I don't even suspect that's the case. But it's just funny to me how people who can be very, very anti-police and see a conspiracy in a cobweb still dial 911. So this is a story. This is from the Telegram and Gazette, and this is from 2015. This is a 10-year-old story from North Brookfield. A 20-year-old woman with Down syndrome was found by a police officer 4 hours after she walked out of her home on Bigelow Road on Tuesday, triggering a search that included a helicopter, several dogs, and the local police. Charlene Brown, who lives with her sister and brother-in-law, Catherine and Adam Vanastrand, loves animals and apparently spotted a gray cat that had been coming into their yard and went outside to follow it. Her sister said she didn't think much, but she heard the door open when she was upstairs. If it's a nice day, we open the door, Mrs. Van Straat said. I was just upstairs. I didn't think anything of it. But she alerted police when she went downstairs and couldn't find Miss Brown anywhere. This is Charlene Brown we're talking about. She was especially frightened because the family is new to the area, having moved from Worcester 3 months ago. With the police helicopter circling overhead, North Brookfield Police Chief Mark Smith was meeting with state police from the Brooksfield Barracks and the K-9 unit in an effort to ramp up the search just before 4 p.m. He feared the evening's low temperatures would be challenging for Miss Brown, who they believed was wearing short sleeves. Family members said Miss Brown is childlike because of Down syndrome, and she might not be able to take care of herself if she was outside all night, even though she was carrying a whole bag of clothing. Searchers were beginning to step up a formal command post. The fire chief, Brad Gannon, had arrived, and he was readying to call in firefighters and the community emergency response team to help when a radio transmission came in, and it brought all the discussions to a stop. Through the static, the voice said that they'd found Miss Brown in the yard of an empty house 300 yards from her own house. The law enforcement officer was checking the vacant house to see if she might have gotten inside when he heard a noise in the backyard and found Miss Brown sitting near the woods crying, a duffel bag of clothes by her side. I just went over and asked her if I could carry her bag, and I made small talk, he said, adding that she seemed agreeable, and he took her hand and walked her back towards her house. When news that she was found reached Mrs. Vandestrand, she and her husband hurried to the house. A neighbor, Kathy Parsons, rushed that way too. Mrs. Parsons' shirt was stuck with prickers after she took to the woods frantically looking for her buddy, with whom she exchanged hugs and they were reunited. Miss Brown was checked by emergency medical personnel from the North Brookfield Rescue Squad before she went back inside with her family. Miss Vandestrand said she and her husband will add security measures so that Charlene doesn't get out undetected again. And the chief, of course, said that this was a good day's work. Law enforcement officer who checked the backyard and found Miss Brown there crying and took her bag and took her hand and brought her home was the cop that you love to hate, Trooper Michael Proctor, just out doing a good day's work. And that's what police work really is. We're looking at this big case, this Karen Reed case, and somebody's dead, and there's suspicious circumstances, and there's plenty of blame to throw around, and there's plenty of suspicion to throw around, and there's ugliness in the text messages of Michael Proctor, but he's a normal guy. And you could say, well, he's a good cop gone bad. You could say whatever you want to about him. If you've already made up your mind about who Michael Proctor is as a human being, I'm never going to be able to change it. But you need to see both sides. That at one point, Michael Proctor was somebody who found somebody who was in danger and brought him home, because that's what police officers do, even for the people who hate them. Again, not saying that's what happened for the Browns, but 911 still gets dialed even by the haters out there. Drew.
You're right. If your mind is made up about Michael Proctor because he said the C word and everything, that's fine. Like, I get it. I totally understand it. I'm sure Michael Proctor gets it. He spoke for the dead. He rose to the level in police work where he investigated homicides, and from here on out, all of his cases are going to be kind of under this haze because of those bad choices he made. And the thing that I would caution everybody about like screaming, jumping up and down, and discrediting Yuriy Bukhenik and Nicholas Guarino and Michael Proctor, they're heavily involved in the Anna Walsh case. And unless you think that it's another conspiracy against this, I think his name is Brian Walsh, if I'm not mistaken.
2 out of every 3 men in Massachusetts are named Brian.
Right, with an I, not a Y. But if and I'm going to get fact checked on that. Please do tell me in the comments what the guy's name is. I think it's Brian Walsh, but he is currently charged. They don't have a body. They know that there were inconsistencies. In fact, Yuriy Bukhenik picked up on a lot of the inconsistencies in interviewing the mother. He appeared in a hearing that's right on YouTube. You can look at it. It's on Law and Crime channel. but it's all the same people, and they're doing the same work. And it's like, okay, so did they just selectively decide that we're going to frame the girl, as the text message said, or are they dirty in every single thing, or are you just selectively listening to what the defense is trying to tell you? Because all they're trying to do is discredit them to get their client free. They're not thinking about John O'Keefe's mom, who's sitting there with a 1,000-yard stare, and they're not thinking about the niece and the nephew who have lost a mother, then a father, then an uncle that adopted them and took them in and loved them, and the girlfriend who may end up going to prison. Like, I know people think it is a done deal that she's not guilty. It may very well be, but the jury hasn't rendered that decision yet. So this was the humanization episode. I just remember, the people that you're launching your nastiness at are human beings, to include John and I. I can handle it. I've been handling it.
I cannot handle it. This will be my final episode.
I've handled it for 30 years, not well sometimes, but whatever. But there are two sides to every story, and there are definitely there's more than two sides to these stories.
And people aren't just cartoonish villains. You can't just describe them as the few characteristics that you hate and say, I know the entirety of that person and he's just a bad guy.
Or I know the entirety of that profession. It never ceases to amaze me that we just say cops are all blank. Like, everybody else is like chastised for using for painting with broad strokes, or for using prejudice or whatever. But when it comes to cops, it's fine, because all cops are the same. Every single one. We're a monolith. We're just all dirty, lawbreakers that want to ruin your life.
Folks, if you want to be a part of the show, you can call into the show at 848-COM-911. That's 848-266-6911. Drew, I have a voicemail that I'm going to play for you, with your permission, as always.
Please.
Hello, my name is Gerald Allen. I have a question for you today. When Karen leaves John's house at 5 whatever in the morning, the timestamp on the camera, the Ring camera, matches up to when she puts the key into the car. How is that even possible? If the door is shut, she would have to turn the key on to move the vehicle. It's on motion detector, the camera. So it wouldn't match up, would it?
If I'm making heads or tails of that, I know he was struggling to articulate it, which is understandable because it's a confusing issue. I don't know the answer to this question. This is definitely a question for Nicholas Guarino. But what he's right. Like, she would have to be in the car with the key for it to trigger the time, right? Then, because the timestamp would show that. But the Ring camera would show a different time, because it doesn't trigger until she backs out, like triggering the motion sensor. So let's leave it up to the sleuths. The
people in the audience. I don't have a Ring camera because there's nothing across the street for me to record. But I guess the only thing I can think that he's getting at is that maybe the clocks are off, but happen to synchronize in a suspicious way. But I guess what I would get at, without fully understanding the nature of the evidence or the point he's making, is that what does that suggest? Does that suggest that the Ring camera is fraudulent, or has been doctored, or has been otherwise edited, or what does it suggest?
Yeah,
I'll leave it to you. You guys leave a comment. What's going on with that Ring camera stuff below? Educate me, since if I take a stab at it, I'm going to be wrong anyway. I would hate to do that.
Sherlock stay-at-homes.
All right, Drew, if you want to get more from the Comm Center, make sure you're checking out this video here, right here. Watch this video that gives you even more details about what's going on with Canton's finest police officers. If you want more rage bait, or if you feel better about the police officers, you can watch that, and it'll probably change your mind. But check out all of our content on here. Make sure you're checking us out on socials. Drew, as always, it's been a real pleasure.
Bye.